From the great state of Texas, you are now listening to Skip the Noise podcast, a Rounded Edge media production. Thank you so much for joining us, and by us, I am referring to, for this special edition of the episode, Ben, aka Mexican Nostradamus, and myself, Benji. Rick, unfortunately, is not with us. However, we do have a very special guest in one Jon Rosenthal, a Democrat serving in the Texas House of Representatives. You may have heard on the news recently that Jon and 60 some odd of his colleagues left the state of Texas to go to Washington, D.C. in efforts to block the passage of legislation that would add a plethora of new regulations to the election process here in Texas. So we caught up with Jon from D.C. He's got some great opinions and insight on the things going on right now. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Well, Skip the Noise listeners, we are in for a treat right now. We have on the show a very special guest, a Democratic member of the Texas House of Representatives, Mr. Jon Rosenthal. Jon, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. You doing okay today?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we wanted to get into the fun stuff. So recently, with the voting laws we've talked about on the show quite a bit. Greg Abbott, the Dems had quite a response in disagreement. Could you just give us, from your perspective, the state of affairs going on and how that's playing out in Texas government?
Well, I mean, there's the substance of the bill and the two sides' actual substantive responses, and then there's a bunch of political theater around that. For me, I'm for those that don't know me, my background is I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I've worked in engineering for over 25 years. So I really am a nuts and bolts spreadsheet kind of person. I am that annoying dude that brings spreadsheets to arguments. I used to annoy all the other engineers, with my pedantic fact checking and all that. So the bottom line is we're here engaged in a parliamentary procedure that's constitutionally protected, and we're doing it to fight a bill that we believe is terribly egregious, and it's an assault on our freedom to vote. And I personally am here because it's a cause I truly believe in, and we see stuff. There's a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of conversation. People talking about, oh, Dems just don't want a voter ID law. Y'all, this bill is 47 pages long. It's not a voter ID law. There's very little about identification in there. So I live in Harris County. I'm a Northwest Houston resident, and a portion of this bill goes right after some of those cool innovations that we had during this last 2020 election, the drive-through voting, expanded voting locations, 24-hour voting. Those things are explicitly limited or banned in this bill. So it's like they saw we had a record turnout in Harris County. They're like, oh no, we can't have all those people be voting. We're going to go right after that stuff, right? So in that, to me, we had a bright young guy forwarding those innovations and did it by the book. Really, all that stuff was by the book. And going after that is just going after, new innovations to expand access to voting. So while I disagree with that, I probably would not have broken quorum just for that. Right. This bill goes at shaving the margins. It goes after our freedom to vote in real and substantive ways by erecting barriers, by intimidation through new criminal penalties for simple mistakes, like if you make a simple mistake on a mail-in ballot application, or if an election judge makes a simple mistake during the process of doing their work, there are criminal penalties that can be brought. You can literally go to prison for a year or two. And just like this case we had recently, the woman from Dallas, a lady named Crystal Mason, had an issue with a ballot. She was on probation. So she went through a federal criminal jury trial, ended up with probation. Probation officer gives her all the, here's the list of things you can do and you can't do. You can't have a gun, can't hang out with felons, yada, yada. It never told her that on probation she was not eligible eligible to vote. So she was already registered. She went to cast a ballot in Dallas, and her name wasn't on the voter roll. So the election clerk, the election worker, a young person, gave her a provisional ballot, which is this thing that allows you to cast a ballot, but it will be checked before it's counted to make sure it's valid. So when they checked it, they found that, she was on probation, ineligible to vote. Ballot was thrown away. This woman was arrested, taken away in handcuffs, and given 26 months in prison. So she's fighting that, but for attempting to vote. So now we're going to have expanded criminal penalties. This was under previous law that happened.
Oh my God. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's just absolutely crazy. And then the other part of it that I want to mention is the partisan poll watchers. I hear a lot of people say, well, both sides are allowed to send poll watchers. So a campaign can hire and train people to go to the polling place and sort of observe election activity to make sure no hijinks are going on and whatnot. And that actually is fine if you got people from both sides and they can observe, and I don't have a problem with that. This bill empowers partisan poll watchers to be closer to you. They can literally look over your shoulder to watch you cast a ballot so they can see what you're doing. The bill, and people who say, oh, that he's lying, that's not true, read the language of the bill. It literally says to be close enough to see and hear election activity. And that means they can stand right next to you. Not only that, this bill says even if they violate the law, even if they transgress penal code, even if they threaten somebody, disrupt the polling place, election judge can't even ask them to leave until they've given them a warning, an official warning. And even then, only if the election judge witnesses the activity themselves. So you're basically giving partisan poll watchers a free pass at least one time to literally get in your face and say, I'm gonna shoot you if you vote this way or that way. So, if you can imagine the crowd of insurrectionists that were at the Capitol on January the 6th, and we had quite a few of those from Texas, let's just hire and train those people to watch over your shoulder while you're casting a ballot. Okay. So that's just a little bit of it. I know it's a limited time program, but there's so much bad stuff in this bill that is aimed at certain communities of color, urban communities. And it's not just that bill. There's more. It's an assault on our democracy. And it's not just Texas either, which is why we came to DC. There's a slew of these. There are conservative think tanks that are writing model pieces of legislation, sending them to legislators all over the country. And bills exactly like this have been filed in whatever it is, 43 different states. A few states have already passed similar legislation. So it's slightly different flavors and slightly different variations, but it all comes from single source model legislation. So it's an attack on voting rights across the United States, not just in the South. There's areas in New York getting this too. That's why we came to Washington to get, to urge the Congress to just put some federal guardrails in place. You know what I mean? Let's have a level playing field in some respect so that the freedom to vote is protected.
Well,
it feels like go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to in regards to the theorem, because, since the 70s, that's been the Republicans and, basically their playbook. Let's limit access in a way to prevent any type of as populations become more diverse. I think that's always been part of the playbook since the 70s. I mean, that was, the famous speech, and I keep forgetting his name, but he basically said, we just want less people to vote because they're trying to limit it to a certain population that will tend to overwhelmingly support a certain way, and to remove basically all the things that happened in the 60s in regards to civil rights and things of that nature. So there's a lot of that play. So it's a very deep issue, and it's very egregious the way that Texas and several states are trying to play into this. So with that being said, do you see that agenda being propagated throughout this Texas legislative session, or do you see, is there any chance that at some point, because you have the possibility of Texas looking towards a purplish state, and having more of a balance of the left and right, schema. Do you think that there are some moderate Republicans that may start trying to look at the concept of why they're trying to limit voter access, or is it just going to be just a continuous party line, and they're going to stay at that hard right belief? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you see any of that movement?
I do. So I'll be really candid about how it works, for at least my impression of how things work sort of behind the scenes in the state legislature.
Right.
And I do believe that most folks try to get elected to serve their communities and better the state of Texas. And like you would hope, you got some principled conservatives that just have different opinions about that. We can have substantive debate.
Right.
Some of these guys are, men and women, are well-meaning, well-intentioned, and really very reasonable. And there's even one or two who have spoken out about this bill and some of the other stuff that Republicans have tried to forward. But the truth is, this stuff comes from leadership at the very top. So if I can toss names,
please do. Please do. Please do, because I got a list that I don't like. Yeah. I've made plenty of comments regarding a couple.
Two at the top of your list are Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott. And so, these are number one and number two most powerful politicians in the state of Texas for state politics. And they are forwarding a very hard right agenda, and a lot of people think Greg Abbott trying to set up a run for president. Maybe so.
Yeah.
We talk about him trying to out-Trump the governor of Florida, right? Ron DeSantis.
It's true.
It's
true. How many times has he said he's like the fourth most powerful person in the world? I mean, I don't know if you've seen those wonderful speeches every other time. If Texas was, we have I'm more powerful than Russia. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
The dynamic, the way that it works out, at least from what I can see, is that the Republicans are better at requiring unity on their high priority items. And it's unspoken and well known that if you cross party leadership, your stuff ain't going to happen. So if you want to keep your power, if you want to keep your spot, Republican Party of Texas not going to back your campaign if you go against the governor or lieutenant governor. And so on those few items that are their high priority items, you'll see a very uniform vote down the line for the Republican Party. And if you look closely, there's 2 or 3 mavericks that do not give an F about what anybody thinks they're going to vote the way they vote. And you can tell the way they are. And I may not always agree with them, but I admire them for being independent and voting their mind and voting their district. So, but the truth is, if Abbott wants it, they'll vote it through the Senate, they'll vote it through the House. Yeah. And his priority items are like this voting bill and the going after teachers, limiting, chilling teachers out of actually teaching history by saying that criminal race theory is some weird stuff that they have changed. They have assigned a new meaning to that. But all of these things. And, going after trans kids and all those, they got this stuff. Sometimes, we'll have these not confidential, but sort of private, close-in conversations on the House floor, and Republicans will say, oh man, this bill is a piece of crap. I wish we weren't even having to deal with this. I'm like, well, why you vote for it then? And they say, dude, I don't have a choice, that. So that's what it is. And so if we're going to have any kind of deal space on if we're going to modify election law in Texas, that has to be done with the governor, because we know we cannot. There's the Speaker of the House, is actually a pretty good guy, and he's got kids, he has a heart, but the truth of the matter is, he cannot keep a deal. He can say, oh, we're not going to do this or that. But his area of authority is only in the House. And once it goes to the Senate or the governor, they're the ones who are going to call the shots at the end.
Well, the big part was the rewrite, right? The rewrite was the big problem. That's why y'all made the decision to, of course, you instructed parliamental. Yes, you use parliamental procedures. Everyone can say one thing or the other, but you did follow the parliamental procedures, and you basically vote. And you
dude, the guy wants to defund a branch of government because 60 of us took a long lunch. Like literally, We walked out at 10:30 and the session ended at midnight, right? So we gone for 90 minutes. And the reason that they kept it so late, just like you said, was in conference committee, they rewrote the bill and added a whole bunch of provisions that wasn't part of the debate, wasn't part of the committee, and that it wasn't part of the committee hearings, public hearings and all that. It wasn't even a committee meeting. So you have a conference, the way this works is if a version of a bill is different, passed through the House, passed through the Senate, they're different and irreconcilable on the face, then each side appoints 5 members and they come together in a conference committee to hammer out a compromise or a solution both sides agree to, and then it gets explained but not debated or changed, and we can vote it up or down. And that's the conference committee process. And then if it gets voted out of both, if it reported favorably by the House and the Senate, then it goes to the governor's desk. The committee didn't even meet. It was just the two. It was Senator Brian Hughes and Representative Briscoe Kane, who you may know who he is.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Same dude that threatened Beto O'Rourke after he made his gun comment.
Yeah.
In the presidential debate. And those two guys between them wrote this and didn't even show the new language to the committee and brought it to the House floor and the Senate. And they wouldn't debate it. They wouldn't take questions. You know, they were doing their own parliamentary procedure to call the question, which means you end debate and go ahead and vote on something. Because we had planned on killing this using normal order. We had 40 Democrats. I was one of them. When a bill is presented at the end of debate, every member has an opportunity. If you sign up, you let them know, let the speaker know that you want to speak for a bill, for, against, or on a bill, and we can talk for 10 minutes and say whatever you want, really. We had 40 Democrats lined up to speak against this bill on the House floor. We were just going to run out the clock, and they circulated their petition to end that process and call the question so that we would have been forced to vote on it. And that's when we walked out. We're like, yeah, if y'all going to play your parliamentary tricks, there's one in there for us too.
Yep. And that's amazing. And I love how they try to paint the story a totally different way. So I commend y'all for what you're doing. You know, you guys took a lot of flack when in regards to like, not necessarily national media, but just local media and things like that, because you guys do have to, you know, you have to contend that, you know, Texas is is always going to have a slight conservative edge to it. So it's one of those states where you have to be a Democrat in Texas has to kind of, you have to work with people, right? That's what we have to do. That's what we do. I think so. In that context, it's very difficult. So you guys have constituencies to have to deal with. So just the flack you had to deal with a lot of the local media must have been difficult. And Fox News went to town on y'all.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
My God. I feel so bad, but I'm glad that you did it. I am glad that you did it. And you guys are heroes, no matter what anybody says. And it's pretty cool that y'all do that. And, you know, I love the side story, like, oh, people got COVID from it. And you're just like, you guys, it's just.
Oh, actually, I want to talk about that for a second.
Please do.
Because this whole story is an advertisement for the vaccines, y'all. And I'm sure most people watching this are probably already vaccinated, but if you're not, there are people in your family who are not, you know, you got a group of roughly 70 people, because there's 55 of us, plus there's some staff and support people that are with us here. And it's a long story, but the end of the story is one member tests positive because they were going to get a medical procedure done. And they had been with us, you know, for a few days. And so then we go ahead and bring the test, and we're going to test everybody. And we had a few positives, you know, and this is breakthrough on vaccinated people. So I don't know. I cannot confirm or deny if it's the Delta variant or whatever, but that's kind of what's going around. And the 6 members total got it. 2 showed some symptoms. From what they described to me, it was less than what I had breathing the air in DC here. You know, I get a little congested sometimes. I wake up in the morning. Houston too, you know, it's like that. It sounded like it was less than my typical sort of hay fever allergy thing that I have every day. Anyway, and I've been negative every day, 7 days in a row now.
Oh.
The other 4 had no symptoms at all. One of them, you know, has been going out on midnight runs because he doesn't want, you know, I probably shouldn't but like, doesn't want to endanger anybody or be around people, and he'll get
that's conscientious.
Run for 5 miles and stuff. I mean, we got some fitness fanatics in this caucus, but the bottom line is less than 10% of our group ended up testing positive at all. Less than 30%, right at 33% of those that tested positive had some minor symptoms. Nobody got sick. And this is a variant that's killing folks right now, y'all. Hospitalizations are rising. COVID deaths are rising in our area and around the country, and it's mostly the unvaccinated. So the moral of this story is, even if this virus gets into a group of vaccinated people, nothing bad happened to us. We're all fine.
Right. And that's one of the big things about the state of Texas is a lack of, we're not necessarily we're not as bad as some states in regard to vaccination.
Not as bad as some, but we got about 40% of the general population vaccinated. We're one of the hot spots in the country right now for COVID.
And the big thing is when it comes, so I have medical training, and I'm actually by trade, I'm a pharmacist. So
cool.
That's
so serious medical. Isn't that like an 8-year program?
No, it's about 6 total. It's really not that hard.
It's only 6 years.
They let everybody in.
No big deal.
It's not a big deal.
Big deal.
Not really. You just we kind of hang out, and they eventually give us the paper to do what we do.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'll be honest with you.
4 years for me, and that was a bitch.
Oh, dude, you imagine how many people when I used to work retail would come, and they would just come to the thing, and they'd be like, how long is it going to be? I'd be like, well, it's going to take about 30, 45 minutes. I'd be like, oh, aren't you just putting a sticker on a box? That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just putting a sticker on a box. That's it. And then the other 30 minutes, I'm playing video games. You're right. And so, we get that. I get that, right? Hold on. Dude, I can't save here. So with that being said, so just with the Delta variant, with everything going on, I think one of the big things is when you look at the vaccines and education in the state, we have to understand that, while the coronavirus, its main objective is to overwhelm medical institutions. I mean, that's why we're worried mainly about in regards to a lot of deaths that occur with this. So I think that's where I think there's that cross in the education, because then of course you have the people that think that if you get injected with it, that you're going to become a lizard person, which we joked around a lot about on the show. We made tons of jokes because I'm fully vaccinated. So is Ben. So we just kind of we kind of mess with that concept.
To your forehead so you don't lose your keys. I mean,
I can't, dude. I can't get out of my car without my head being stuck to the door. So I can't. I mean, I'm sorry. Everyone else barely got.
It doesn't work for me at all. I tried it with the quarter, and it
just won't do it. Won't stick.
Well, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. You just get metal. I'd be the greatest party trick ever. If you really believe that, you should do it so you could show off in front of your friends. I mean, what better thing? You'll get like the beer caps and just put them on your head. Game over.
Pull out your Magneto tricks, right?
Or hell, you might be able to open a beer. If it sticks hard enough, you just open the beer that way. But with that being said, we have the Delta variant. We have that. But I love how they tried to make that the sideshow of what the most important thing, and which was the fact that you guys are trying to preserve voting accessibility. You're trying to keep as few obstacles to voting as possible. I mean, that was the whole purpose, right? In the 1860s and in 1820s, when you saw a lot of these voting suppressing laws, and even as far as the beginning, that's not the spirit of what we're doing here. I mean, you don't want to keep people. Now, I understand that we all must maintain rules when it comes to voting. You don't want people voting twice. You don't want any illegalities. You don't want any problems like that. But that's such a minuscule problem in our overall voting schema that this trumped up, and pardon the term, but it applies. This trumped up propaganda has really put a lot of distrust in the voting system. So I could see how, when they make that propaganda, that agenda to make people very afraid that everyone's cheating and everyone's stealing, you can see why these guys that, while there's some that probably know that this is all a game, because no one really believes this, right? No one really believes any of this. You could ask somebody privately and go, do you really think that he won? and they'll be like, no, he didn't win. Of
So
course he did.
while I agree with you, there are some true believers.
Oh
And,
yeah, no, there's some of those. Marjorie Green and some
there's
of those
definitely
are.
some, and I've had folks, not just her. I've had some folks approach me and say, there's no way he lost. That you all are just wrong about that. There's no way that Trump could have lost. And I'm like, y'all, you want. So first, there's a long history of using the scapegoat of election integrity or election security to restrict the right to vote. This has been going on for 150 years. It's not anything new, and that same excuse is exactly what they've used over the decades and even in recent history. So that's one. Number two is, given that that's the excuse that they've used, and we've got decades of law, we've got decades of building statute built around making our elections secure. Y'all, our elections are very secure, and this election was massively scrutinized from start to finish. The Secretary of State for the state of Texas said it was smooth, secure, and safe. It was smooth, secure, and successful were the words she used. And because she said that, the Texas State Senate refused to confirm her for a fresh term. We no longer have a Secretary of State in Texas, right?
Oh my
because
God.
they acknowledged that we didn't have voter fraud. The Attorney General of the state of Texas hired outside help, spent 22,000 staff hours, $250,000 in a 6-month effort to desperately find anything he could freaking find. And he says, well, we have 40 cases under consideration out of 11 million votes. Out of those 40 cases, 16 actually had errors on the ballot, and they were like address errors, and whether they were intentional or not. 16 out of 11 million. Some people think, according to articles that I have found, that is roughly the same probability as being struck by a meteorite. Not even struck by lightning, which is actually something that happens, right?
Right.
You've heard of somebody getting struck by lightning, or your car gets hit by, or something like that. Not cars, because they sit on rubber tires, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
that was a nice engineering when you put it in there. Well, no, you're isolated. You don't have to worry about being grounded with the rubber between the
not in a car, but
I like that.
Like lightning rods or lampposts or trees
get
struck by lightning, and that's about a 1.5 million shot of getting struck by lightning. It's 1 in 700,000 is the probability of finding an errant vote in Texas. So there's no freaking fraud, and that's not what this is about. And when they relax and say that part out loud, it becomes clear. Representative Steve Toth has brought a bill to do a quote unquote forensic audit on the is it the 12 largest counties or third on counties with a population of larger than 415,000 people or something like that. Only Democratic counties. And when he interviewed with the Washington Post, I don't know if you've seen this, he literally, when they asked him, why not just do the whole state? And he said, well, it would be time consuming and expensive. It's like, well, would you be open to reviewing some of the votes in some of the smaller counties? And he said, well, I would, but what's the point? They all vote red. It's like, they don't even pretend it's about election security. It's about suppressing Democrats.
Right. And you did a great job of spelling out, especially earlier, you're talking about some of the frustrations with how, pressure to, particularly amongst the Republicans, to go with not to break party lines and to go follow the top down message. Right. So as in your position, what keeps you motivated, and what, or I guess, are you hopeful for Texas in issues like these?
Oh, I am. I'm just an optimistic person. And we have, first, I'm so proud of this caucus that I'm a member of, and people can call us all kinds of names and ridicule us and stuff like that. But we have got some dedicated, smart, hardworking people who really are doing this not as a political stunt. We are doing it to protect the freedom to vote for Texans. And really, if we make the stand in Texas, we let me put it this way: we made a stand in Texas, and we have captured the attention of the entire country, really the whole world. I got friends of mine in other countries saying we're on the news in Japan and in France and in England, right? Where I got friends sending me messages from these places. Y'all, with the kind of attention that we're bringing, I really am hopeful that we can get something done, that we can, whether it happens in short time or longer time, like, Congress going to work the way Congress works. They don't tell us how to run our session, and we can't tell them how to do theirs.
Yeah.
But I really do feel like a lot of meetings we've had been positive, and I do feel like there's a very good chance that they will find a way to protect the freedom to vote. It's such a fundamental thing that it ain't over till it's over, and I sure am not giving up on this. So, and neither
here. That's good stuff, man. That is so awesome. I applaud the effort, because I think voter access, that's fundamental to democracy, no matter what side you're on. And people don't understand, once they get done with one group, they're going to go after the other. So you may think that, oh, okay, I'm safe because I'm an American citizen, I'm this and that. But if people don't realize, early American history, the only people that could vote were landowners. And people don't realize that, yes, that got trickled down by people. They're doing what you're doing. They're trying to make access more so that everyone can get there. And it's just madness that people don't realize that. It doesn't matter what side you are on, it should be easier to vote, because everyone's opinion matters.
It should be, and it is it's sort of the foundational principle, of our system. And if you want a government of the people, by the people, you've got to have their voices have to count. And no matter what it is that you advocate for, whether it's you want to, I don't know, whether you're right, lean left, hard right, hard left, if you want your opinion to count, if you want your values to matter, your ability to vote and elect people that represent those values is the key to having your voice heard in government.
Yep.
It's why I decided to run, because, a lot of reasons, but I felt like just normal, everyday people from our communities should be the ones who walk into the state house and inform the policy of the state. That's the deal. So the right to vote is fundamental to that for both Republicans and Democrats, independents, Green Party, libertarians, whatever you are. If your vote isn't heard, you can't elect your representatives. And if you don't elect them, then someone else gets to decide what the rules are.
Yeah, absolutely. And and another too, speaking of, things that are foundational institutions, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about public education in Texas. And, that's another sort of battleground right now that we're just kind of, where are you at with that? And what are your motivations, or what are your goals for, I don't want to say maybe an attack, but with what's going on right now in Austin?
It's a good question. It's fair. And public education was like the prime mover for me to leave actually a job that I love, a career I love, that I honestly want to go back to being an engineer for a living. It pays pretty well. This job doesn't pay anything.
Yeah, no, it does not. For sure.
No, it
does not.
No, it's $600 a month or something. That's exactly what it is. It's constitutionally mandated. It is what it is. But my dad was a lifetime educator. Both of his parents were too. So I grew up my whole life with a reverence for teaching, for public education. And that was the one of the main things that brought me into politics. Was public education in Texas was being wronged and underfunded. The STAR testing system, like we could talk a whole hour about why that's horrible. It is horrible.
Any test that is just made for a box of people. And nobody, I agree. That's probably for
and I have
day.
studied that at length, and we could talk about that at length.
That's another day, all day long.
And that's another day. Like we can do a whole show just on
easily
why it's horrible, and it is. But
I agree.
What's going on right this very minute is we got a pandemic, flaming up and spreading like wildfire. Number of cases is doubling like on days, not on weeks or months. And so the rate of growth is accelerating right now, and we're seeing a lot of hospitalizations and stuff. Lay on top of that the governor and the education agency, Texas Education Agency commissioner, have decreed by royal decree that thou shalt not allow distance learning anymore. So kids who get sick or might be sick, or families that have, very vulnerable or immunocompromised people, cannot participate remotely. Your student must attend. And just to put a cap on crazy and go as full-blown insane as you can, on top of the fact that we're in the middle of a surging pandemic, you have to go to school in person, and mask mandates shall be banned. So let's just, we're not going to require vaccinations against COVID for children. Obviously, it's not. It's not.
Well, that one's kind of an up and down one. That was kind of up and down. We have to be a little careful with the children in regards to just.
No question.
I think
I'm
the
not
test.
advocating for that.
Yeah.
I'm right now. It's allowed for children 12 and older, and I totally get, how parents may be one way or another on that.
Right.
But if you're going to be in this environment where, you've got deadly illness circulating that's more contagious than the previous strain, and you require, we just went through a learning curve to develop effective distance learning techniques. And so I think at a minimum, we should have those available for kids or families that are worried. I will divulge that I've got a large family, but we have a situation in my family where mother of a young boy, a 7-year-old boy, she's vaccinated. Obviously he's not. And he's been in class, going to summer school right now. And he brought COVID home, and his mother got sick. And right now, she's been vaccinated, but she's sicker than anybody around us got, but she's got like multiple underlying conditions. So, I'm just livid about this situation. I'm probably going to try to put together a formal statement on it or something. But y'all, these people doing crazy on top of crazy, and they do not care about the human beings that get it, that are caught up in this. So,
well, would you say also that it's also the dogmatic approach that the right has taken on everything, whether it's guns, whether it's vaccines, whether it's anything? There's no middle ground, right? For the most part, Texas Republicans are conservative, but I think there's been some type of meeting something. Now it's all dogmatic. It's like, you can't have a balanced approach.
Right. And it comes from the very top. I think, like I would say, a bunch of my colleagues in the House would probably be open to debate and have a substantive conversation, but it won't matter because the governor has decreed. He says, we've done enough, mandates for COVID, and we're done with that now. It's got to be personal responsibility, and this by, sorry about the folks that might get offended by this, but the party of personal responsibility doesn't take responsibility for anything.
Very
and
true.
They don't act responsibly.
Oh.
So,
say it louder. We can all hear this.
It's not every human. There's plenty of sensible folks that identify as Republican or right-leaning. Most of those people, I got some Republican friends who are like anti-Trumpers, and they're conservatives and will debate policy, and that's fine. None of those people think that distance learning or remote learning should be removed as a possibility. It's something, it's a tool, and we should keep that tool in place. It's even if your kid didn't have COVID, what if he had a bad cold? What if when I was in 6th grade, I got a case of double pneumonia? I was out of school for 6 weeks, and wouldn't it have been great if I could have participated, online? Exactly. And none of that stuff existed. Teachers sent home assignments, and I tried to keep up. But you know what I'm saying? It's a very valuable tool for a number of reasons, and we should allow the use of it.
Well, it's just cutting off access to education, right? I mean, in the end, it's just another thing to prevent access to. It's like we should be trying to make everything easier for people because we want the solid building blocks of our society. So education should be one of them, 100%. You should have easy access to it. If there's been home schools for years, right? And that's been a very large movement. The way that they're curtailing these rules, it seems to still allow that because there's a large contingency of conservatives that do homeschooling. They're trying to promote that, but they're saying, but you can't do, distance learning in a regular setting because, oh, that's different. It's a very, there's too many twists and turns in all this. You know, it looks like certain Republicans districts in the state of Texas.
Weirdness. You know, there's going to be, as a result of this in the environment that we're in right now, there's going to be some families that keep their kids home because they think that's the only choice they have. And without distance learning, those kids are going to fall behind.
Yeah, I agree. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. At least I don't understand like why they won't let certain districts just do a mask initiative, right?
You know what? Let the districts
sense.
manage their business. That's why we have independent school districts, because there's a massive variety in how big they are and the populations, and even within a school district. I'm in Cy-Fair School District. Even within our district, there's, you know, different populations in different schools that would work in different ways, and let the districts do their business the way they're supposed to. Let them determine their own thing.
Makes no sense for Republicans who talk about personal responsibility, the de facto destruction of a centralized one-way thing. They want to centralize one-way things like that. It's the total right. It's the total. I'm losing words today, but it just makes no sense for someone who says, I want personal liberty, freedom, carry a gun, but a school district can't say whether or not you have to wear a mask. Well, what? Like what? Like I understand, like it just makes no sense. It's like they want to take away community control when they also say it's better to have a decentralized government. So it's crazy. So yeah, it's a total just losing that one. I'm with you 100%. Just let people make their decisions in regards to like how the school districts want to run, and then also listen to what the teachers say. Right. In the end, that's part of the game. I mean.
Oh, teachers should be driving policy. No question about that.
Yeah.
When it comes to teaching, they probably are the experts, I'm guessing.
Right. Right. Exactly. They may know a thing or two.
Seems to be the overall thing is to kind of mute them as much as possible. And it's like, speaking of that, as far as the classroom, there seems to be, the big kind of pushback against the introduction of the critical race theory. Would you talk a little bit about that? I know there was recently I'd read an article, and I don't know all the details of it. I apologize, but there was something in there they were trying to pass where it said you wouldn't be allowed to teach the Ku Klux Klan as a immoral entity. And I was going to see what you knew about that, and I'm sure I wasn't getting the whole story. But it just seems like there's a lot of
first they have passed that law. That is already law in Texas.
Wow.
Under the auspice of banning critical race theory, which, by the way, is not at all what they say it is. So first, it's not what they say it is. Second, it's not taught in public schools. And third, really, this is like graduate level law school stuff, where they look at the impact of race on societal structures. And it really, anyone who doesn't understand that that the cards are stacked against communities of color don't have any actual real relationships with people of color. So
it's true. And once again,
right.
Yes.
So the bill is egregious and racist on its face. And when you look at what was put in there, the way that it's structured is it can bring penalties to teachers and administrators who teach certain subjects without a balanced approach to teach both sides. It's like, I'm sorry, man. I know history teachers talking about, if I'm teaching about slavery, there's no balanced approach. There's the people who thought it was cool to own people, and there's people who fought against that.
Right. Exactly.
No, in between. There's no two sides to that. Right?
No, it's like you owned a human being, man.
So the point is,
you're bad.
The point is, it's a major step at whitewashing history. Right. It really discourages teaching of all sorts of things, including the history of racism and white supremacy in this country. And anyone who thinks that history doesn't exist or is not relevant, there's no conversation I can have to help them understand if they believe that's not still structures and remnants from that have been handed down through generations. And I faced it, in a school board meeting in our district last month. We had the our Cypress area Tea Party organized an action on a school board meeting where they went in there and they shouted down our school board trustees, who are nonpartisan, elected volunteers. They don't get paid. Cy-Fair is considered, a good school district. It's pretty successful, even on the measures that are used. And I think it's run reasonably well, very well. And no, they're shouting them down. And even when school board trustees saying, y'all, we don't, what you're talking about, we don't teach that here. It's not part of the curriculum. And they're shouting, they're drowning them out. And I got up to speak. I signed to speak. And I said, besides the fact that what you've been told about this, is pure horse manure, even if it was being taught here, you're in the wrong place to change policy on education. You need to go visit your state board of education because they set the curricula and the TEKS, right? Yep. And they shouted me down, called me a liar. I'm like, I'm just telling you, this is not the entity that determines what curriculum are.
Well, and as me, I'm a big student of history, so I'm huge on that. I love history, always dug it. If you don't learn it, you're doomed to repeat it. But I think the problem is that people are, and this is also part of the the sentiment regarding critical race theory, because we had a show about it, we talked about it. What I feel the sentiment occurring with it is that everyone's trying to say the critical race theory is basically they found one person on Twitter who tried to describe race relations as in this, and basically that all, not to offend anybody, but all white people are evil, blah, blah, blah. And so all the right went to that explanation of critical race theory in that sense, right? They all said, oh, everyone thinks we're evil and everyone thinks that we're slave owners. But the real value of learning a balanced history that talks about, the impacts of race relations, not necessarily of race relations, but just of how society and basically the sociology of it occurring during that time frame is important, right? Context is everything in history. If you don't understand, 1,000 years from now, you could do a report about Hitler. If you don't have true context, it's the way we talk about Genghis Khan, right? We all think, wow, guy was crazy. He beat everybody. But you asked all, the northern and southern states, China, and everyone that he slaughtered, they don't think that. So context is huge. And so the lack of context, I think that's really what critical race theory is trying to bring into the picture, correct?
I believe so. I'm certainly not an expert on it, right. But I'll just give you an example of how this dynamic plays out. The dude that brought that bill, same guy, by the way, that's got the election forensic audit bill. Steve Toth is the one who brought that bill. At the microphone, admitted under questioning that he doesn't have a college degree. And so dude without a college degree wants to direct education curriculum for the state of Texas, having a debate with Dr. Mary Gonzalez of El Paso, right? Representative Dr. Mary Gonzalez from El Paso, who has a PhD in education and did her doctoral dissertation on critical race theory, like one of the leading experts in the country on the subject, on the microphone, debating with a guy that never studied it in school and never, graduated from college. And the bill author, the conservative guy, told her she was wrong about what she was asserting. And she's like, dude, I've read a stack of books on this. I'm just telling you, what this actually is. I personally know authors that write on this. I did a doctoral dissertation on it. I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you what you think it is not what it is. And so same thing, conservatives shouting at me in a school board meeting, telling me I'm lying because I'm telling them school board doesn't implement curriculum. It's the state board of education.
Right. They have those debates. So and the textbooks that are even utilized in the state by state schools have to be approved by this committee, correct? I mean, that makes all those decisions.
By the state board of education does that. And the impact of this bill that they just passed is like $15 million because you're going to buy a bunch of new textbooks for the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And there's a new one. Governor thinks we didn't do enough on that in this last session. They pulled some serious hijinks with that bill. We put a bunch of amendments on it in the House chamber, where they agreed to add specific teaks for things like Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, Trail of Tears, Susan B. Anthony, stuff like that. And then they went over to the Senate and struck all that stuff out in conference, and then brought it back over and tried to get us to vote on it. And James Talarico, who is the teacher, killed the bill in the House on a point of order. So they went back over to the Senate and magically stripped out all their own amendments and sent it to the governor's desk. So it did go to the governor's desk and get signed. Our amendments went into it, but now it wasn't explicit enough. And so on the special session, they've got a new bill that you can go look at this bill. I forget the number of it, and I could go look it up for you at some point, but they got a new critical race theory bill on the call for the special session that specifically lines out, removes from the TEKS, which is Texas Educational Knowledge and Skills. So that's the curriculum list. Removes things like Ku Klux Klan, Trail of Tears, Martin Luther King, literally removes all that stuff. It's a major whitewashing of history. And, if I wasn't here to protect the right to vote, I might be here to protect the right to teach history in schools.
Oh my God. That's just crazy. That just doesn't make any sense. That removes all context of history. And it's just like, I just don't get that. I just don't get that. I mean, I know they say the winners write the history, but we're supposed to be somewhat fair a little bit.
Context is massively important in any conversation, a conversation of history, a conversation about almost anything. Just ask the people I work with. I won't even have a conversation about X or Y until we have a conversation about the context that this is inside of.
And that's
because
smart.
Without context, your conversation is meaningless.
Yep. Concur.
And for you as an engineer, especially, these things must be frustrating when it's like, if you were going to design a spaceship to land on Mars, you would want to know every single possibility of every single detail of every measurement, right? But when it comes to educating the future of our country, let's go with a nice little.
We'll leave out the schematics for the rockets.
We'll leave out the details.
The life of an engineer. We got a real simple test for our stuff. So you build a thing and it work or it don't work. And if you got it right, it works. And if you screwed up, it don't work.
Hey, I like that. I like that. I like that simplicity of the point of function right there. It's just like, does it work?
It gets complicated. And I built, offshore subsea systems. I have been involved in some major advances of technology on this planet. And I love working with big machinery, but really, and I'm a math guy. So systems engineering is my special area. And that is the study, what you do. Systems engineers build mathematical models to simulate complicated systems. So I really am a math guy, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to you built that thing and it works or it don't work. And if it don't work, you're in trouble.
Man, I get excited when I don't knock over the Jenga pile.
I know, right?
That's the extent of my engineering. If I don't knock over Jenga, I'm like, I know this. I've got balance, function. I got this. Your subsea systems may be slightly more complicated.
Yeah, I'm terribly, terribly horrible about, I critique design of everything I see in my head. It's terrible.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Yeah, exactly.
It makes me a real good engineer, but really
hard to be around. Yeah, for sure. Hey, before we wrap this up, Jon, and once again, very appreciative of your time you've spent with us. I do want to let you give it. I know you do a lot of great work with committees. Is there anything you're particularly that we didn't get a chance to talk about here that you're really excited about, or anything you're working on?
So right now, we're out of regular session. The committees that I'm on are agriculture and livestock and land resource management, which go together well. I kind of didn't understand why the speaker would put an engineer from suburban Houston who works in oil and gas all of his life on agriculture and livestock committee. But I had a great time. Actually loved the experience of learning a whole bunch of new stuff. So it gave me a whole new appreciation for agriculture and livestock in this state is the next major economic driver after oil and gas. And they took a huge hit in that winter storm. So none of us think about how many chickens died or how many thousands of gallons of milk got destroyed or how many citrus trees not only could have lost the crop of the storm, but also lose the next crop because they get screwed up. So all that sort of stuff really gave me appreciation for agriculture and livestock. But on land and resource, I think we made very positive steps towards making the eminent domain process more fair. And some eminent domain is like a nice way of saying the railroad can take away your land if they need to put a track through your yard. Or critical infrastructure. So in Texas, of course, that includes pipeline, and there's this whole business about the rules for how they do it and how they have to offer a fair price and all that kind of stuff. So some people think it's inherently unfair that a private property owner can be subject to eminent domain and lose rights to a piece of your property just because they want to run a pipeline through it. And I'm not arguing that. I know how some people feel about it, but the process used to really disadvantage the landowners, and we put in a bunch of protections for them so that at least they can get a fair price and some due process and some professional representation. You know, anytime anyone has to walk into a courtroom, I hate that crap. I could never be a lawyer. It just gives me all kinds of anxiety to have to deal with law, or somebody sues you or some stuff like that. I mean, that kind of stuff is really difficult to deal with. And a lot of these landowners, you know, farmers in rural areas, they don't know anything about this law. And it used to be really easy for bad actors to take advantage of them. And we put in place some rules that provide them free professional representation in these interactions so that they have someone to help them manage the process.
That's awesome.
I think that was a real good step.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's all. Well, thank you again, A, for your time, and B, for what you're doing, representing the people of the great state of Texas, myself included. I'm my kid. Yeah, my kids go to Sci-Fair, and I'm in the area. So thank you for everything you've done, and continue to fight, sir. And it has been a pleasure to have you on. So, have yourself a wonderful afternoon. And let's see, got any parting words you want to bless us with? Yeah.
Well, I do. I thank you for letting me go on and on about stuff I'm passionate about.
Oh, our pleasure.
Really,
we loved it.
Enjoyed the experience. And I should probably send people to my website, jonrosenthaltx.com. Support the effort. Support me if you want me to come back in the legislature. I do hope to seek a new term. I like what I'm doing, and I'm not totally broke yet. So it's like farmers used to say, you know, I hope I win the lottery so I can work my farm until the money runs out.
Nice.
That's right.
But thanks so much for having me on. It's really been a great conversation.
Well, we got the Skip the Noise seal of approval, so that'll go a long way. but we thank you so much for your time. And this has been a pleasure, and we hope to hear from you maybe again sometime. So we definitely enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Great.
Let me know anytime.
Great. Thank you, sir.
We'll do, sir. Take care. Well, there you have it, guys. We just stepped into a new.
I feel legitimate.
Yeah, it's a legit show.
I feel so legitimate now. I mean, I feel like I'm actually almost like a real, like we're doing something real here. I feel so legitimate today. So that was
shit.
neat.
Yeah,
what a cool guy. What a cool
he
guy.
Really
right?
was.
Oh my God.
Really was very down to earth. Gave us what was exciting about that is in what I hope to bring out. I didn't necessarily want to ask him point blank. I just kind of want to see where it goes. But the fact that he did specifically mention about how that kind of behind the scenes things work in in lawmaking and in the legislature with the political pressures that exists and why people do certain things. So I thought it was really good. He hit on, kind of everything we had envisioned to talk to him about. I know Rick is sitting somewhere probably
seething
and throwing things around his room and breaking
gnawing on
furniture.
A piece of metal.
Yeah, I'm gnawing on metal and sandpaper. But hey, you know what? It's just sometimes we gotta,
He's like that dude from remember Angels and Demons? Remember that movie with Tom Hanks, the guy that was like beating himself and stuff? The flagellation guy.
That's exactly
Rick
what Rick's doing right now.
He's got that tourniquet on his leg, like must be tighter.
Yeah.
Really cool guy though. Very down to earth, man. That was cool. He's got, like I said, he's got the Skip the Noise approval. Guy, just came on, was very friendly, super cordial. Nothing, just a really normal guy. That was cool. I really did appreciate him doing that. So that was awesome, huh?
Shit, yeah. It definitely didn't have to, by no means.
No,
nobody has to be on this
ever.
So we're excited. We're excited to. I feel like we took another step towards legitimacy.
Yeah,
getting our goals and our points across. But no, it's good. I feel like it's always good for folks to hear from somebody who's actually in it and doing the work. A, what those challenges are, and B,
and at $600 a month.
Yeah, it's right. It's not.
This is a self-sacrificing job. Like this, that's
really
for real. I mean, man, that's hardcore.
And hats off to anybody, that puts themselves out there and does that, because nobody getting rich at that. At that level, but it's got to happen. That's how things work, and how we continue to excel as a society.
And it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, right? I mean, it's just the fact that you're willing to deal with the level of scrutiny you're going to deal with for that position, the small amount of pay, and then how much hard work it takes to get reelected every time. I mean, that's dedication. So you got to give a shout out to anyone who's serves society, serves their community, envisions, trying to give the best vision of what they believe can help people. That's pretty crazy. And I think you see that on the state level way more than national level. Like these guys at the state level, I think they really care. And so it's very refreshing to see that thought that I had was not only proven, but it was even beyond my expectation. He's just a very normal person who just cares and is sacrificing whatever to help society. So that's pretty neat. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the overall message too, I'd like to kind of point out to the listeners is that these people, and one of the great things why it was a privilege to have him on, is that these people are out there, guys, like putting it on the line and doing this work. A lot of times that gets overlooked. It's never brought into the public eye until there's some big deal with, Texas Dems flee to Washington and have a COVID party and give everybody, you know what I mean? You see that played out, and that's how it happens. Now you get to see what actually happened. So that was, to me, that was the beauty of having this interview as part of the show. So, but something we believe in, and it gets overlooked, man. It gets painted or painted and twisted in a
And that goes both ways. I think that everyone paints one thing one way, paints another thing the other way. It's just cool to be able to have just them come on, and and if there's we get a state representative that's a Republican, we gladly do the same thing. I just think that these individuals should be definitely applauded for their devotion and for their civil service, and I think that's the pureness of the democracy, and so I do like that. That is cool. So it gives you a little bit more faith in the system.
Yeah, exactly. When you find that there's actually humans.
Yep.
Doing
And I hope that's what everyone takes away from this. Remember, your local representatives are big deals, guys, and you need to support them. So if you're out there in the Cypress area and you hear Jon Rosenthal and you like what he has to say, go out there, vote for him and help him keep in office. And not saying the guys that are going to run against him are bad or anything. I mean, they probably are, but in the end, these individuals care a lot about what they're doing. So just go out there and support them, whether it's for one party or the other. Just support your local representatives.
For sure. And then, so if you want to follow Jon on Twitter, it's at JON _ his last name Rosenthal, ROSENTHALTX at Jon _ Rosenthal TX. So go ahead and follow him there. He's got Instagram too, but I think Twitter's
Nice.
but yeah, you'll get all access to everything else. But yeah, guys, I mean, you got anything else, Ben, you want to close out with in this special edition, the midweek? And
who's going to drop who's going to drop the teaser that maybe we may have him on at some other point regarding what it's
so regarding. Of course, yeah, in true irresponsible fashion, we forgot to ask the alien question before we shut it down on the recording, but maybe next time we'll see.
And I think
if he would grace us. If he'd grace us with his presence a second time somewhere down the road, we'll definitely get into this. But let's just say he made a case for statistically proving the existence of our friends.
And he is a math guy, so I believe him.
That's what I'm saying. So
he's a math guy. I like it. I like it a lot.
He's going to.
That being said,
yeah, if we can't do it ourselves, he's going to shake up the whole pot and make you all believers. So maybe next time, but anyway, we're excited to be able to do this for the listeners. Other than that, man, I guess we'll wrap it up. We will have a regular show too with the trio intact, God willing, recording early of next week. So I'll put this out this weekend.
Yep.
Get it out to the listeners. I don't know who I'm going to close the show with as far as the music. You'll just have to enjoy whatever it is you hear. So with that being said, guys, we'll wrap it up in another bun and put it on a tasty plate with a little umbrella sticker to hold it all
together. Some garnish. Make it look pretty.
Maybe a little side dish. And you guys, we'll see you early next week. Take care.
Bye.